building a pretty successful comedy career, and suddenly we're all Christians.
The Lord just spoke to us, and we could see that comedy would be a really viable way to communicate the gospel.
Well, we were just naive enough to think we can pull off the ultimate oxymoron, Christian comedy.
That this is a serious topic, but let's have fun telling you about it.
We didn't know any better.
The 70s was an interesting time. The Jesus movement was kind of in full bloom, and there were several groups, and the whole just Jesus music scene, as it was called then, was coming into being.
The Jesus people came in. Larry Norman came in, and Randy Stonehill, and just a lot of people who really just said, you know what? We can take what the world is doing, and the church can do it just as well. But that wasn't happening in the comedy world.
There was an irreverence about comedy, a humanity to comedy that was, I guess, kind of scary for the church.
Anytime we would use any part of the arts, it was always half done or very, very mild in content, of course. If comedy happened, it was an accident.
Isaac Airfreight came in. I was like, oh, look, we can do this too.
It was like a drink of cold water after this long desert. There just wasn't anything else like it.
What is your name, sir? Buck Weezer.
I'm a junkie. A Bible junkie.
My name's Friday. Good Friday. I carry a badge.
Call me Hudo.
Hudo. Yeah, right.
That's kind of an interesting name.
Yes, I like it.
The name's Grover. Claude Grover.
Hello, front desk angel.
Hi, Lance. Hey, Norman.
Welcome to the Ed Herman's Talk Radio Show.
One more time for Rapture Hotline.
Barlow! My name's Carl Corkscrew, and this here's my brother Jake. We're the Corkscrew Brothers.
Right before high school, a number of kind of counterculture, esoteric comedy improv groups started to surface. And I thought, that's it. That's the kind of comedy that I want to do.
I met Dan in high school theater arts class.
We said, let's form a group. We called our group Turkey Dinner. But we realized we really needed a third member.
They were looking for a comedian to join a three-man group. Two guys were looking, and so I went out and auditioned.
We were into the same groups, with the same style. We found the same things funny.
I'm going to try for a quick interview. Rod Bentley. This is Wally Wickenshield, Celebrity Corner. Do you think maybe we could get a quick interview with you there, big fella? Oh, okay. Oh, my gosh, I'm standing here with Rod Bentley. Rod, you're causing quite an exciting little occurrence here. How's it feel?
Oh, it feels great. Such a pleasure that all my fans came out.
Right on. Well, you know, a lot of people in town here have said that you're washed up, fading fast, over the hill. Are you surprised at this kind of a turnout?
No, not at all, Wally. As you know, my new movie with Lydia Hearn.
Banjo Fever?
Right. It's opening tomorrow night, and it's quite a blockbuster.
You produced this one yourself, didn't you, big fella?
Yes, I did. You know, all my money went into the picture, and I stand to make quite a penny.
We were building a pretty successful comedy career. Things are going well. We're getting a lot of bookings. But I felt this inner need. I felt some sort of emptiness inside.
There was a point in time when Dan started searching spiritually for what the true meaning of life was. And he searched a lot of different religions and philosophies. But when he found Christianity and he was telling us about it, it reminded me that I was already a Christian. I just wasn't acting like one.
I was on the floor weeping and saying, God, I don't really know what all this means. But I know it has something to do with poor in spirit. That's where I'm bankrupt. I have all these great things around me, but in the inner man, in my soul, I'm bankrupt.
My wife and I, we went to a charismatic Catholic meeting. That night, I accepted the Lord.
During the time that I accepted Christ, we had taken like a 2-week break from performances and rehearsals. And then we had a rehearsal scheduled at my house. And the guys were coming over, and I thought, I'm going to have to quit the group.
It was a funny moment because we wanted to do the rehearsal, and it was like, well, before we start, I have something to say. And then the other guy says, well, okay, but before you say that, I need to tell you guys something. The other guy says, well, no, let me just say this before you say that. And it turned out we all had the same thing to say.
Right. I mean, now we have the 3 of us who are building this comedy club career, and suddenly we're all Christians. Well, we were just naive enough to think we can pull off the ultimate oxymoron, Christian comedy. We didn't know any better.
Watch out, world. Something big is coming your way. They're alive, they're bold, they're friendly, they're the crazy Christians. Walking down your street, sharing with your neighbors, sharing with your children, and yes, even sharing with you.
Well, Coach Isaiah, Coach Zechariah, Coach Daniel, they're all prophesying a mighty victory, Robbie, and hey, in fact, the other day in the clubhouse, Daniel was saying to a couple of guys that the victory was already ours. All we had to do was claim it and go out and play the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess Daniel ought to know. I remember a game he played some years back against the Lions. Shut him out, as I recall.
What a game.
Yeah.
I remember the first gig we played as Isaac Air Freight. We played at the little fellowship hall at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa on a Sunday afternoon before evening services.
We'd been writing material the whole time. We had over 2 hours worth of stuff, and a lot of the stuff we did that afternoon, the following meeting, was part of the first album that we did.
And man, we were scared because this was new. This was something that, you know, we've got to be funny, but we've got to appeal to Christians. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but it did.
We got reports he might be at a garden in Gethsemane. How do you feel about that?
Gethsemane, I doubt it.
That makes him a doubting Thomas, doesn't it?
You write your own material?
The reaction to Isaac Air Freight when we first hit at the church was an overwhelming welcome. People wanted to laugh. And when we hit the stage, it was like you just opened up the floodgates.
Okay, where are you from, Buck?
Oh, Chula Vista, California.
Chula Vista, California. A couple of Chula Vistaites here.
Hey, got the PTA here.
You're not nervous being on television for the first time, are you?
No, I just didn't think I'd get chosen, you know.
I can see that.
Hi, Ralph. He dressed up like a turnip and they wouldn't let him in the McDonald's.
I think it was before Isaac Air Freight came along that Chuck Smith said to me something that was a bit unusual for him to say, because I was running Maranatha Music with Chuck Fromm. He said, you know, man, you guys got to find a way to do a comedy album because people need a reason to laugh. And I bet you'd sell 1 million of those who did a comedy album. And I tucked that away in the back of my head thinking, that's kind of unusual for him to say that.
When they hit the road, it changed everything. I mean, it's really, I don't think, an exaggeration to say they really changed the language of comedy in the church.
Being a West Coast guy, that was a breath of fresh air, because before that, there were hee-haw level comedy things going on in church, but there was nothing West Coast. There was nothing SNL cutting edge, and Air Freight was the one. They filled the void. They set the standard, and so that really changed things and gave room for laughter for people that had brains.
Well, my beef, as you say, Tom, is this Noah here in this big boat he's building.
So what have we been talking about, the one downtown there?
Yes, that's right. Smack dab in the middle of the Red Light Lounge and Bernie's Liquor. It's quite an eyesore.
And I understand it's causing quite a problem with the local businesses.
Yes, that's right, Tom. You know, with our tremendous population increase, parking is a major problem in that downtown area. And that big tugboat of his is taking up approximately 300 spaces. Now, you figure 3 people per vehicle, that's roughly, carry the one, 9 900 voting systems that are effective.
Right.
Unless you got moped or something like
yes,
that.
but in all fairness to Noah, Governor, I should point out that he does have valid parking permits for all 300 spaces issued by your office, if I might add.
Yeah, but Tom, parking's just one of the problems. You know, the other day, the women's club, they wanted to put up another idol there in the park.
Yes, sir.
And they went on over to Sweeney's Lumberyard, and he was plumb out of gopher wood. Now, come on, what about progress? I mean, after he's been there for over a century, well, I don't have to tell you, those animals, they don't smell like no flower shop, if you get my drift.
and with a nose like yours.
One of the most memorable concerts was very early on. The Christian body was still kind of figuring this out, and we played a little church in Southern California, and we get up there, and it's dead silence. There isn't a sound. And I remember backstage we're going like, hey, cut the next sketch. Let's get out of here. Let's just cut the next one. Cut right to the finale, and let's just get out of here. So we quickly go through.
We're packing trunks while
right.
Warm up the van.
And when you're not getting laughs in a comedy show, it goes quickly anyway. But so afterwards we're packing up, and this guy comes up, and he said, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And so we said, well, thank you, but why didn't anybody laugh? And his response was, well, you can't laugh in church.
Most of the time in church, we don't give people an opportunity to laugh at all. There's a lot of serious stuff we're dealing with. You know, worship's pretty serious, the sermon's really serious. You know, we expect God to touch us and change our life. And sometimes, and just a quick moment of comedy, my life can change.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm looking for 777 Pearly Gates.
This is 777 Pearly Gates.
Great. Is there a driveway or front door or something I can get in?
Wait, what's your name?
Want to check and see if I got a reservation, huh?
Something like that.
No problem. The name's Grover. Claude Grover.
Let's see, Gibson, Grant, Green, Gunderson. No, I'm sorry, no Grover.
What do you mean, no Grover? Hey, there must be some kind of mistake.
No mistake, your name's not in the book.
After all the things I did for you?
Isaac Air Freight, I'm going to say it was Dan, once again, who came up with the idea. Isaac, the word for laughter, air freight, because we figured when we get raptured, we're nothing but air freight. We're going up. And so we put the two together, Isaac Air Freight.
Okay, we ready to go? Let's hit it! Let's hit it up there!
We can get this thing Brodian, you know?
They call us the Corkscrew Brothers. We can go down this mountain all the way down.
You know, I've been working on the engine. It's only got 2 gears, you know, first gear and overdrive. We'll put it in overdrive in a minute.
It's up!
I used to secretly lay on the bedroom floor when I was 13 and play an album by Isaac Air Freight. And in the summer heat and the wind is wide open and hear that and those stories and laugh and going, why can't we do this at our church? Why can't I get to go see something like this? But never had I heard a comedian who was also a born-again Christian.
I went to a local church out here to see them, and honestly, it was a revelation. I mean, I didn't know guys did sketch comedy at that level based on things that Christians would get, Christians would understand.
I can remember sitting in the den of our home, listening to it, and repeatedly cracking up, so that by the time, I think within that first week, we had all of your sketches memorized, because we knew all of them. We just listened to it because there's nothing else like it. It was the best.
When I heard my first Isaac Air Freight album, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, these guys are cool and it's funny, and maybe there's a way to be funny and combine it with your faith, and that's what they did so well.
Isaac Air Freight came out with Fun in the Sun and just pretty much revolutionized the way people thought about, Christianity, comedy. They can actually go together. That had never been done before. It was a little eureka moment.
Growing up in a very religious community, it taught me not to fear, but to kind of mock the mainstream culture. To have religious people mocking these mainstays of pop culture or questioning or having fun with them, I think that was a really powerful thing.
I'll never forget, the first time Dave Toole did Phil Donahue, I just lost it. He could have held that Phil Donahue pose for 5 minutes, and I would have still been laughing along with the rest of the audience.
Well, one of the things that Isaac Airfreight did is they would not settle for, this is just okay for church. The same kind of quality that was demanded. If you're sitting in front of a paying audience in a comedy club, you better deliver. No one has to like you, and you've got just a short amount of time to in a comedic sense, kill or be killed. And in church, it was a little bit different thing, a little bit more of a forgiving audience, but also because they were trying to do something that was so innovative, which is laugh in church, they had to be good on two different levels. They had to be good on a comedic level, be funny, but they also found a way to proclaim a message at the same time.
They had that artistic ability and that professionalism from the get-go. They played comedy clubs.
Seeing Air Freight live was so cool because you can experience the albums, which was great, but live, all of a sudden there were lighting cues. It was a professional. There was a sheen to it. You know, this is before Christian groups even knew to do anything with lighting.
The thing that Isaac Air Freight taught me when I was back in my 20s was that we have to raise the bar. If we're going to compete in the world, if we're going to compete in the culture, you got to be really, really funny. And it's not just cheesy, corny church humor. It's got to be really good.
I mean, they did Let's Make a Deal and, you know, Trade Your Salvation. And so I just have to say that the best thing about that sketch, and again, cultural relevancy, but because that was live, the audience is really the funniest part of that sketch because the audience goes wild. It's like, no, don't trade your salvation. Don't do it. It's like the sketch is good, but the audience is hilarious.
You know, Buck, that little bag of salvation probably won't last you very long. With that TV, you can watch it forever. And your wife's gonna love that mink coat, all for that little bag. What do you say, Buck?
Oh boy, it's tempting.
I know it. And I'll tell you what, Buck. Besides these gifts, I'm gonna include the $500 cash, the crock pot, and Carol Merrill.
The one in blue?
Mystery Buck, it can all be yours. What do you say now?
Oh,
the gifts. The gifts?
I'm gonna go ahead and stick with the bag.
As a performer, what you have to understand is when you're doing big outdoor festivals, first off, they're next to impossible to try and get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people to pay attention to you. So they have the big jumbotrons now, and it makes it more intimate. Isaac Air Freight was doing it for thousands of people when they're on hills going over into Pennsylvania. It was guerrilla comedy. You couldn't just say a line and have your timing. It was like your timing's adjusted every place you go. 2,000, 10,000, always different. So yeah, they had their chops.
I always thought Isaac Air Freight was so pioneering in a couple things. One is they were truly funny, intelligent material, and it would relate to the non-Christian person and get them thinking about things. Like, oh, that really is pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Ooh, that's exactly what we do, isn't it?
My wife's birthday is coming up in a few weeks, and I thought maybe she'd like something religious.
Well, I'm very sorry. So you see, we don't sell religious items here. We sell religions. I'm here to see about starting my own religion. Fine. Was there anything specific you had in mind? No, not really. Just don't want no hell, that's all.
Religion story is the one bit that my family remembers and still talks about years later about how true that was and how, how unintelligent most of us are on what we believe and how we're very selective.
I don't know if these guys realized what they were doing at the time. You know, when you're like a pioneer, I don't think you say, hey, we're pioneering. I think they were just doing it. And because it was birthed more in the club secular scene, the comedy could stand on its own. But because these guys loved God so much, it seems to me like they just couldn't help but having it permeate their work. And so you'd be laughing your head up, but then you'd be going, well, that's a good point. Maybe I need to think about my walk with God. And so when you can get people to laugh, kind of use humor for a higher purpose, I think that's really awesome.
On a rare occasion, we would have a critic or someone who would call in that would say, you guys are being sacrilegious. You're making fun of God. And we would make it really clear that we were never mocking God or finding humor in the things that God calls sacred. We found our humor in the absurdity of man trying to live a purposeful life when he's rejecting his creator. I mean, that's absurd. How can you live a meaningful life when you disregard the one who gives you life?
Last week, this station had the unmitigated gall to broadcast their belief in Jesus Christ and his soon return.
Now, I was born in the United States, and I've been to church, so I like to think of myself as a Christian. But I find it hard to believe that this is, as this station puts it, the final days. In fact, I find a lot of what the Christians are saying today hard to believe. Take, for instance, evolution. Now, Christians are saying that God made man out of dirt. Now, I find it hard to believe I'm nothing more than a big mud pie, you know? On the other hand, I have no trouble whatsoever believing that many of my relatives are monkeys, and I'm sure you'd agree with me. And what about astrology? They say you can't even rely on your horoscope anymore. Now, I don't see anything wrong with it. Of course, I don't believe in astrology, but then again, I'm a Sagittarius, and we're naturally skeptical anyway.
Everybody laughed, and everybody watched, and everybody paid attention. Not because of this mystical, beautiful story of God's love, but because they were good. And then when they watched, because they were good and professional, then people could hear the message behind the madness.
Well, who's your broker anyway?
Who's our broker? Did you hear that, Sims? He wants to know who our broker is. Our broker is E.F. Bullish. And when E.F. Bullish talks, people listen.
Well, yes, I can see. But, you see, we do things a little differently at my company, Mr. Boswell. You see, after I read the reports and meet with our board, I pray about what I should do. I literally ask God. So I guess you could say my broker is Jesus Christ. And Jesus says...
Church comedy, whether you do it at talent night or whether you do it whatever, church comedy is about church stuff. Isaac Air Freight changed the paradigm because they were using real world stuff. A huge part of their success came that they use landmarks of real life, not just landmarks of church life.
We didn't grow up in church. We come from a comedy club context. We were coming from a vocabulary that the whole world could understand, whether you were in the church or outside of the church.
Isaac Air Freight was not just cutting edge for Christian culture. Sketch comedy was still new, even in secular culture.
That is not fair. That is patently unfair. Now, if this God of yours, if he's really angry about it, why doesn't he tell somebody? Now, look, he could have come on the radio. He could have been in the newspaper. He could have taken out a billboard. Listen, he could have come on the show last week. I would have had him with the ACLU.
As we started off with, Larry and I used to like to ad-lib, and Dan was really more of a let's keep it going in the same direction. Dan's very much the writer, and so he's really concerned with every line moving the sketch on one more beat, whereas Larry and I dawdle. Almost the point was to drive Dan crazy for us to ad-lib, and then when it was just Dan and I, that same kind of a push and shove where he would feed me a line, and I would give him a totally obscure remark back.
What are you telling me, McFly? You say that Moses won't serve in Pharaoh's court? You people be quiet! I don't need to put up with your lip. You get another outburst like that, I'll have you make a break with half the score! You're a stiff-necked people, ain't ya?
Hello, front desk angel. You're kidding. Scott Kincaid? Praise the Lord. Hey, thanks for calling. Okay, bye-bye. Barlow. Yeah? Scott Kincaid just accepted Jesus.
Oh, boy!
Enough rejoicing.
Okay. We're lucky to do any at all with those hats stuck
yeah,
under
well,
there.
these are kind of crazy.
It's a good thing Billy Graham doesn't have anything scheduled for today.
Okay, let's get back to work. Hello, front desk angel. I don't know, prophecy, I guess.
It was a little harder in the studio to get that spontaneity because we knew everything was scripted and had to be in such a way so we could do the production elements. But on the other hand, being on record opened it up. we weren't limited by, you got to make an entrance here, you got to exit there, you've got to do this, you got to work the mic, you got to be here, etc. Creatively, it took off the reins in the studio.
That'll be your camera there, and this is your microphone.
Chess, what?
You know, sometimes as a performer, you work it all out live, and you bring it in the studio and you try and capture that because you know it works. Sometimes it's the opposite. You do this kind of thing in faith, hoping that later will transfer to live.
Back before it was an absolute given that there would have to be video, Isaac Airfreight was making video where you did all the heavy lifting. They did the sound effects, they did the writing, they did the voices, but it was the little projector inside your head that had to imagine everything that was going on.
Hey, morning, hot stuff. How's business? Great. How's things with you, huh? Hey, just fine. Hey, what you got for lunch? Deviled ham. How about you, huh? Me? I got deviled eggs. Hey, you see the schedule? Who'd you get? I got Joe Parker. Joe Parker? Oh, boy, I tell you, I had him for a month one day last week.
That's not funny.
Yeah. You know, he spent the whole day talking about Jesus.
I always just felt like when you do an album, people need to be able to listen to it over and over and over and over again and still think, I need to listen to it again. Everybody wants to do something creative and pioneering, and yet we're not quite sure how we're going to do that.
I think my favorite sketch, and maybe the quintessential Isaac Airfreight sketch, was Prodigal Joe. And the opening, the three of us would recreate the opening of the old Bonanza TV show where the three of them ride out on horses. We didn't have horses on stage, so we rode out on little stick ponies.
When you're doing a parody, you have to have the details right. Otherwise, it's not going to ring true. And especially, you know, you want everybody to enjoy it, but you're also kind of gunning for that audience member that really does know the material inside out, so that when the piece is delivered, they're getting it.
He's squirrely.
Here's when you know you're doing something right, when people start repeating your bits as if they're your own. So when you start seeing people in youth group and in church and different places, and they're doing Isaac Airfreight material, it's contagious.
I have a confession to make. I'm a junkie. A Bible junkie.
I didn't feel I was fully qualified for that, and didn't feel that that was the direction at that time that I wanted to go. And so I pulled the plug, I left.
That was just the start, though. I went on to bigger things. I read a full King James with concordance.
Dan being very gracious, Dave being very gracious, they called me back to do guest voices on all their albums.
Mitch Teamley came in, replacing Larry, and he was with us for about 3 years touring. He was on our second and third albums. And then he wanted to leave, and Dave and I said, you know, this is getting old, keep replacing the third member. And we started thinking about, is there a way of reworking this show, which had always been three-man, to a two-man group? And then for the last, really second half, almost like 7 years or so, I think it was.
Yeah,
it was
really
just
almost half the
two of us.
expanse of the group was
yeah,
just the two
it was just the two of us. In the early 80s, Christian entertainment was kind of moving into the video age. And sketch comedy was a perfect fit for television. So Dave and I worked on a number of projects, and we wrote and performed on a musical variety show with Russ Taff and Dave Boyer. And we wrote for guests like Amy Grant and Al Green.
Yeah, having a great time, Norman. Great time. Hey, did I tell you about the big old grizzly bear I ran up here a couple years back? I don't know, Lance. I don't think there's any bears out in this part of the woods. Oh, yeah, big old... hey. I've never... Hey, what? Look at the chick over there, huh? I think she wants to be alone. Come on, let's go. I don't think so, Lance. It won't break you. Let's give it a try. I don't think this is a good idea. Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. It's a great idea, Norman.
No thanks, Lance.
Oh, boy. That's real cool stuff, you know. Oh, there. Hi. Hi, how are you? Well, excuse me. I enjoyed my trip. Yeah, oh, Oh. Well, thank you. That would be nice.
What's your name?
My name's Norman.
Norman, you look horrible.
Well,
What happened?
well, I slipped a little in the water there.
Oh.
Here, this is for you.
Thanks, Norman.
Caught it in the river. It's real fresh.
Looks nice.
You're Amy Grant, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got all your albums. You know, the Lord has really used them to really challenge me in a lot of areas of my life. I really enjoy them.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We hope that happens.
You all look good. I do my best to listen to them. I mean, you do your best to record them, and I do my best to listen to them.
Next, we did our own show. We did a kind of a Saturday Night Live style show, which we called the Isaac Air Show.
Hello and welcome to the Isaac Air Show. We're Isaac Air Freight. I'm Dan Ruppel, and this, my partner, Dave Toole. Yes, indeed. And behind us, the magnificent Isaac Air Freight Studios. It's one of the finest state-of-the-art studios here in the country, and well, frankly, Dan and I are quite proud of it. That's right. It is a little modest on the outside. Well, but that's just to keep the crowds down. Good point.
Air freight was to Christendom what SNL was, to secular society, to society at large. And they came with that completely hip sensibility. Again, a West Coast feel, not a Bible Belt feel, not hee-haw, not cornball. And that made all the difference I think in just opening the doors for the future. In the church having to deal with this, just as the church was trying to grapple with the whole Jesus movement in general. We got all these people, they're hip, and there's just nothing we can do about it.
Isaac Air Freight sort of transcended the Christian ghetto so that we weren't just talking to ourselves anymore, and found ways of having a conversation with people who were unchurched that they could appreciate and that we could be proud of sharing.
Hey, on the lighter side there, Rod, how's life treating you, huh? Oh, just great. Couldn't be better, you know. I have everything I ever wanted, and just last week I was named International Celebrity of the Year. Whoa! Couldn't be better. Oh, my gosh. Well, Rod, we don't want to keep you any longer. Of course, you know that the Bible does state, what's the profit of man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul, but... Well, this is Wally Wickenshield here. You know that Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, Rod. But Wally, I'm a star. My fans are so right, but you know that treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivers from death, Rod. Bummer. No.
It was funny, but it was intelligent and made a point. And, making a point sometimes how to do that, where you're not banging people over the head, you're actually not violating their free will to think. That's tricky stuff.
Don't you believe in God?
No, I don't believe in God.
Well, then where'd everything come from?
Yeah. Well, just believe me, you men are much too ignorant to understand these complex
Give us a chance. Come on.
Okay, you see, long ago there was this big bang.
Oh, the Big Bang.
Come on now, we heard all about that on the TV.
Sure. There was a big bang, then a bunch of squiggly things in the lake turned to fish. Yeah. Then one day they walked out of the lake and grew hair. Then they shaved off the hair and became truck drivers.
Yeah.
I think what Isaac Air Freight did in a really cool way was made the enemies of pride and hypocrisy look ridiculous. And best of all, they made it feel cool to be a Christian.
You had Isaac Air Freight doing things and making fun and having jokes at the expense of the wider culture in a way that a minority doesn't usually do. They were essentially acting like they weren't a minority, but a majority making fun of the minority. And it kind of switched the tables around.
It provided a place in the church for it to be acceptable, to do things theatrical that were evangelical in nature, but it was also pop culture in nature. And so it was the very, very first time where the door got cracked to participate with pop culture, that might be okay, that there might actually be something there that you could explore that would be all right.
Well, welcome to the show this evening. Of course, this is the day after tomorrow show. I'm Tom Snooter. Tonight we have an exciting, interesting show for you, but before we get into all of that, I'd like to take a moment, if I could, to talk about last night's show. Last night, if you tuned in and checked your local listings here, you probably noticed our scheduled guest, Dwight Ferguson. Evidently, Mr. Ferguson had some trouble at home. He tipped over a cauldron of boiling oil, popped his waterbed, and wasn't able to get here. But we've rescheduled him for, tomorrow night? Right. Tomorrow night he'll be here talking about his new book, High Priest of Baal. He's a former president of this Nimrod Association thing, and we're gonna try to get some straight questions and straight answers from him well, I guess it's tomorrow night.
Dave Toole could be childlike and just invite you in. He was the John Candy of his age, of that era. Before there was a John Candy, he was there, or the Belushi, that kind of thing. His childlikeness. Every character had that sensitive touch, which just brought him in. And then, then you had Dan Ruppel, the Phil Hartman of the group, the glue to everything, just giving, freedom and boundaries for Dave to just fill it all the rest of it up. And that was the blend. Those two guys is the foundation, and then the others that complemented the complementary pieces. But watching Dave and Dan interact was just something special.
Way back, Marty, to the days of Pharaoh in Egypt. It's your great-grandfather to the 97th power. My great-grandfather to the 97th power? That's right, Marty. Moses McFly. You mean I'm related to Moses? That's right. No wonder I never liked him.
And usually the most talented, creative, excellent bands or groups, each person has come radically different from the other, almost polar opposites. And I just kind of saw that in the group. Here's Dan Ruppel, the intelligent guy, thinking things through, script writing, just looking at the overall design like a producer would. And then there's Dave, who's sort of like, he's got the Skaggy van in the parking lot, and I ask him, well, why does your van look like a piece of junk? He says, because who's going to break into that? I got all this equipment in there.
So, what are you doing tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to go help paint the church tomorrow.
Paint the church? Who's making you do that?
Well, no one's making me do it. Well, I just want to.
Mean they ain't paying you? You mean you're doing it for free? Hey, Squirrely, let me tell you something about those Christians. They're a ripoff. My old man says they're the biggest crooks in town. They don't have to pay for taxes or nothing. They just get guys like you to do all the work for them. Then they just sit around and take all the money from the offerings for themselves. And I hear some of those offerings are over $1 million, Sam.
Well, but that's not true, Eddie. Well, our church doesn't have $1 million. Well, some of the pastors even have part-time jobs just to support their families.
It's all a scam, Sam. You just wait. One day you're going to wake up, they'll all be going to the Bahamas or something.
Well, they will.
Even though Dave and I were very different, where we really came together is our comedy sensibility. We saw comedy the same way. The same things that made me laugh made him laugh.
Dan and I are very similar in a lot of ways. I think it was very easy for us, almost from the get-go, to work with each other. And we saw so many things the same way.
Working with Dave and Dan, you get to feed off of their energy, their personalities, and who they are is part of who I became, and part of what I was able to bring to Isaac Air Freight is the fact that, they're so talented, they're so big and bold and larger than life and confident. I could feed off of that and be a part of that, and that's what, that's, other than that, I'm really dead boring.
You guys got any spare change?
Let's see, that's my bowling money.
Here you
Yeah, I got 20 silver pieces here.
I got some change from the coffee machine. It's 30 silver pieces. That do you?
That'll do just fine, but you gotta promise me one thing.
What's that?
You don't tell Jesus that I ratted on him.
10-4. No one will ever know it was you.
Isaac Air Freight made a safe place for sarcastic, satirical Christians to live, to thrive, to stay in the church, because we needed a place to go. We needed a place where it was okay. And they opened that door. It's like, oh, well, look at Isaac, what they're doing. So it's okay. I can fit in here too.
I was proud to be a Christian when I listened to Isaac Air Freight. And I was proud to be associated with them. You saw possibilities that you just didn't have before. Isaac Air Freight was singular in that ability at that time. And I will always appreciate them for that.
How do I spell relief? P-R-A-Y-E-R.
How do I spell relief? P-R-E-Y-E-R.
How do I spell relief? P-R-A-Y-E-R.
A little wider, Mr. Bemis.
If you want to label a legacy with Isaac Air Freight, I would say it's Christian comedy today. I don't think it'd be here without them starting it, honestly. If you want to say Saturday Night Live spawned all these comedians that have gone off in different areas, I think Isaac Airfreight has the exact same legacy.
Isaac Airfreight is the foundation of Christian comedy, even though we're not doing sketch like they were back then. But they opened the door for the church to be comfortable, to be able to laugh at itself, to not take itself too seriously, and to use humor to communicate life-changing truth. To me, that's really what I see as Airfreight's greatest legacy, was combining humor with a message of the gospel, and that was the best news, that you could possibly communicate.
That beginning had to be in the little scratched-up LP that started in my bedroom, hiding away comedy in the church, so they were not so wild. And it opened a door for me. And of course now, shoot, I've been kicked out of more churches than
We started kind of winding down in the late 80s. For a lot of reasons. Creatively, we felt like we'd pretty much said it all. We'd performed 8 albums. We did almost 15 years of touring, sometimes 200 flights a year. We did so many shows. We did radio, we did television. We were getting a little bit burnt out.
I was a part of the ministry all the way up until God really spoke clearly that, you know what, we need to stop. This is over now.
It was just the right time. It was the perfect time to wind it down and move on to the next chapter the Lord had for us.
Well, what are you gonna do, Specs?
Me? I'm gonna finish shaving, then I'm gonna find something that Bambi Boyer may not recognize if it was staring her right in the face.
Oh, that's my boss!
I think we gave the body the permission to laugh. And I think we gave a whole young generation of aspiring comedians the permission to use their craft and their talent for the Lord. And that's the most rewarding part to me.
It was always a little strange reading fan mail or talking to people who'd given their lives to the Lord at an Isaac Airfreight concert, because their context is, you were instrumental, and had I not come to see your show or bought your album, it's very, very difficult for me to feel like I've done anything with that except I was obedient. And I don't know that there's much more beyond that I could claim credit for.
I think part of the legacy of Isaac Airfreight is the fact that they did it first. That's something that I'm very grateful for, is having been there at the beginning and had the opportunity to work with a couple of really great guys, starting off the idea of sketch humor for a Christian audience. And I think they carried that through the rest of their career.
The impact of Isaac Airfreight, I don't think I realized for a good 10 years afterwards. It wasn't like we stopped around 1990 and suddenly I knew the impact. It was later, especially when the internet came and you started getting emails from all over the world and people giving us testimonies of the impact that we had in their lives, either bringing them to salvation or just opening up a whole new view of what it was to be a Christian. And that it spawned other ministries, and some people called to the ministry. I'm just thankful that we could be part of it. We were just along for the ride.
Overwhelmed. What a privilege that, in my mind, I imagine in heaven, God says, I have this idea for a comedy group, and just a little wry smile, so I know the 3 guys.
God does choose the foolish things to confound the wise. It was an honor. Great time, fond memories.
And you know what? It was a great time being with you.
Same with you. Wouldn't have it any other way. What a partner.
No way.
Yeah.